All right, so welcome to the administrative panel. How to ace your teacher interview is what I call this. So I know that you are all have different perspectives about that teacher interview. So I'd love just to start with each one of you. First of all, to share a little bit about yourself, the job you have, how long you've been in education. And let's start with that. And Christy, why don't you go first, and then Jennifer, and then Veronica.
Okay, great. Great to be here. It was great to hear part of this and your journey. I've been there myself, thinking about the RECA and everything. So excited for you guys. It's a great field to be in. I've been in education 30 plus years and started private in the Bay Area and worked preschool for a really long time, maybe 12 years, and got into finish my education. Worked every grade level except first grade, and on up to sixth. Was instructional assistant. I was an academic coach. I was an intervention teacher. Found lots of possibilities in this field, and then always was on leadership. Was drawn to leadership, and I went back to school and got my master's degree when I was about, gee whiz, maybe 15 years ago. And now I'm a principal, and I'm just love my job. And I see one of my teachers, Ms. Anna's with us, so yay. Yeah, so great field. I'm excited for you guys. Go ahead.
Thanks, Christy. Jennifer?
Good evening. I'm also very excited to be here. I agree with you, Christy. That brings back lots of memories listening to all those steps. So I'm Jennifer Taylor. I'm currently the assistant superintendent down in King City with the elementary district, but I was born and raised here in King City. And then after college at Fresno State, returned home, started teaching, taught for many years. I've been in King City. I'm finishing, or I'm in my, I guess we're not finishing in December. It feels like it, doesn't it? This is my 29th year. All but 2 of my years have been in King City. I did have years 6 and 7 of my career were in Alisal. It was a wonderful experience, but started having children, and back to King City we came to be right here with grandmas, grandpas, aunts, uncles. Many of you, I'm sure, can relate to that. So I've taught the primary grades, so multiple subject credentialed, but I did spend all of my in-classroom teaching years in the primary grades, first, second, and third. Been a reading coach, assistant principal, coordinator of various programs, director of student services, special education, and now assistant superintendent. So very excited to meet all of you, even if it's virtually.
Veronica.
Hi, everyone. So I'm Veronica Aguilar. I'm principal of Alianza Charter School. It's a dual language immersion school in Watsonville. I was raised in Hollister, California, and I still live there, but I've commuted here to PBUSD for 25 years. And most of my experience has been here at Alianza, but I did work at several of the other schools here. As a teacher, as a paraprofessional, my experience has been with 4th through 8th grade students. I've taught different subjects in the middle school, Spanish, social studies. And I'd like to say that I'm a middle school student by heart. I love them, and I believe I'm as immature as they are, and love them to death. I became assistant principal of Alianza a couple of years ago, and this is my 3rd year as principal of Alianza. And I'm a proud Armadillo. So I'm excited to be here, and I love hearing your journey also. And hopefully I'll be able to give you some wise words. I don't know how wise, but I'm excited.
I was just thinking the first question, before I get to the first question, I'm curious if all 3 of you remember your final semester of student teaching in college, what that was like. Yeah, mine was like 35, 40 years ago. And I keep reminding these students and future students, we all remember what all of them are going through, for sure. All right, so with that, Veronica, why don't we continue on with you? What if you talk a little bit about the most important attribute you look when hiring a teacher? And then Christy and Jennifer, feel free to jump in. We'll just kind of keep going in this order, from Veronica to Christy to Jennifer, and we'll keep going that, or if you've got things to add to it, go for it.
So for me, I think the most important one that I've learned, especially in the past few years with this experience, is collaboration. I want to hear from the candidate that they are open to collaborating and working with either, small groups or with our whole staff. That became very important, and it's very apparent that we needed collaboration and be able to shift from working with one person, one teacher in your team to 2 to 3 to the whole staff, especially when we were in virtual. So that's what I'm looking for right now, collaboration.
Yeah, I would agree. That's very important with grade level and the whole school. The other thing I thought about when coming here tonight is opened to learning new things at all times. And I think me being a 30+ vet, I still have so much to learn, and we don't have it all. We don't. And so to know that it is a journey the whole way. Open to learning new things and asking for help if you need help, and working with your colleagues. So yeah, that's what I would say right now. Go ahead.
And what I would add on to those, I have a feeling all night we're going to be, I agree. But the other piece that I know, I'm sure we're all looking for, is that passion for connecting with students and bringing out, the best in the students, helping them reach their full potential. There's a lot of skills that you just are not going to learn until you're in the classroom on your own day after day, and things that can be, that your district can assist you with. But that passion for it, that drive, is something that really can't be taught. So I think that's, along with the openness and the collaboration, is that passion for connecting with and bringing out the best in students.
Wonderful. I'm going to combine the next 2 questions. And Jennifer, why don't we start with you? The next 2 questions are, do you have an expectation of how a teacher candidate might look or dress for an interview? And then tied into that, what are you watching for in the first 5 minutes of the interview?
Okay. So, the expectation, I don't think is too extreme. Obviously, you want to be professionally dressed, but for professionally dressed does not mean, a suit, tie, formal business attire necessarily, but certainly professional, ready to be in a classroom. Jeans and t-shirt aren't going to be the interview is not the place for that, for casual Friday. Think of that first impression. As someone in an HR training said to a colleague and I, you only get one chance to make that first impression. We've all heard that. But the second piece she followed up with is what you see at an interview and what you receive on your paperwork is, you have to think of that as that's the best that you're ever going to get out of the person before you. So if the thought and care hasn't gone into how you're presenting yourself, both on paper and in person, then it's really hard for someone to believe they're going to see better beyond what you give that first time. So that would be the first part. And then I'd say in that first few minutes, again, we're looking for the passion and looking for, while someone is really thinking about their answers, being very honest. If you don't know how you would respond, react, or you don't have past experience because you're brand new, that's okay. The interview panel should know that this is brand new for you. So being honest, and perhaps you don't have experience in the situation or the scenario. So what would you do? And be honest up front with, I haven't had that opportunity yet. That's not something I've experienced yet. Here's what I would do.
Veronica?
Well, I'm going to agree. Definitely professionally dressed. And I'm only going to say this because we still may have some Zoom interviews or anything like that. Sit up, be in an area. You could have a blurred background if everything's not okay. Be in a quiet area. And I'll repeat it again, sit up and not being laying down in your sofa or your bed. And goes with being professionally dressed at the same time. If it's virtual, you still are required to be presentable and ready to interview. In the first few minutes that I look is a positive outlook, that they see this as, that passion. I love student-centered, that when you're answering your questions, it's all about students and what you will be offering students. So revolving, your answer is revolving the student, and a growth mindset for students and yourself. As you know, was mentioned by Jennifer, that you don't have to have all the answers. And we know that some of us enter the profession with little experience, but that you have that growth mindset for yourself and the students, that you can and will seek help and grow in those areas.
Boy, you guys said it really well, both of you. I agree with everything they're saying. The thing I look for in the first 5 minutes is a connection right away with the panel. And I know, you know, some people, you're nervous. So even just saying, I'm nervous right now, kind of can break the ice for you. And just making a connection, a strong connection is what I look for to begin with.
So Christy, we'll start with you with the next question. Or Jennifer or Veronica, anything else to add? No, okay. So Christy, what are some ways that you recommend? Oh, what's the preparation a teacher should do prior to the interview? What would you recommend that they do ahead of time?
I would look up the school's philosophy, the district's philosophy, and depending if you're in a district, look at what their goals are as a district. You can look up their school site plan. I mean, sometimes it's kind of hard to read through, but look at their website, see what they're focused on. Maybe have some data for what they have shared on their website, their PBIS model, things like that. I would ask them to learn about the school, their English language learners. Know what you're going into. We have some Title I schools and a lot in our area, and kind of what we're focused on in each school. I would know your audience for sure.
Jennifer?
Sure. So to build upon that, that was actually one of the first things I had written down, Christy. It's also, you may not know, obviously you don't know the questions going in. And depending on the routine of the district, they may give you the questions ahead of time to look at upon arrival. They may not. But you can almost guarantee that you're going to have questions asking about your classroom management style, asking about how you'll connect with students, how you'll connect with parents, how you'll work with your peers. Those big ideas are going to come across in some sort of question. Again, as Christy mentioned, as far as the English learners, not only knowing what the demographics of the district are, but what experience have you had and what would you do to make sure that you are meeting the needs of all your students, and then thinking of the various subgroups. And if you've looked at the district, you kind of have an idea of what those subgroups might be, whether you have experience or whether you're planning ahead. But you can think through what are the key points that, regardless of how the question is phrased, that you would want to make sure that you share under those umbrellas.
Veronica?
Whoa, covered it all pretty much, except I wanted to add on to when Christy mentioned PBIS. Definitely you're going to get something on discipline. So really understanding what the beliefs or the strategies or the program that they're implementing in your district or your school that you're applying to. And I just want to reiterate the idea of reading up on the school or the district. Really looking at their website, a lot could comes up in their website, special events, especially if you have special skills you could bring to the school, their district. You know, they have a ballet folklorico, you love dancing, then you could see, oh, they have a dancing group. That's gonna, you know, that's something you could add during your interview. So really looking at where, and whether you really fit in that district and the beliefs that they're bringing. So it's really important that you go to their website and make sure that you're applying to the school or the district that has your beliefs or shares your beliefs.
So Veronica, we'll continue with you. And could you talk a little bit, so in PBUSD, what's a typical interview process for a candidate? Do they get interviewed one time and get a job, or what happens?
No, it depends on the year and sort of how many candidates. They do different types of interviews. You could have a group interview where there's several principals that are there. And so you're going to be interviewed by basically a team of principals, or you could have a like for example, here at Alianza, we sometimes invite our candidates here and they may have been interviewed at the district and then they come and interview for our school because of the uniqueness of our school being a dual language immersion school. So they could even have 2 interviews here. And then we are not allowed to offer the position. We recommend teachers. So basically we do sort of when we're interviewing, we rate teachers and say we are interested in these 2 candidates for these positions or this position, depending. And sometimes at our school or at the district, you're interviewing for several positions. So at several schools or several grade levels. So it all depends on how many teachers we're looking for and how many candidates there really is. I mean, and right now, as we all know, we're lucky to hear there's so many of you graduating in December because we definitely are in high need. So that's basically the basic process.
Christy?
Very similar. We have usually a panel of people interviewing. I bring on teachers, maybe with the same grade level with the opening, myself, maybe my academic coach, and go through a battery of questions. At our district at MPUSD, we look, people apply to our schools. I'm an art academy, so it's specific. You may choose to be at a science school or just depending where the openings are. And so we gear, and then we call on the applications. We look over the applications, call and let actually I don't call, thinking back. We reach out to HR and they set up all the interviews. And we interview and then put recommendations just like Veronica. And you guys are at a good time to be graduating in December. We are in need. I already got Anna, so yay for me.
So Christy, before we leave that, you brought up another interesting point, which is it sounds like it's important to know the school district, not just the school and the process, because what I heard you just say was that in your district, the schools are the ones that really do the hiring. Would you recommend that teachers, if they like your school or read about it, reach out directly to you before applying? And how might they do that? What is the best way to, not be a pest, but also to, shine above the others, so to speak?
Yeah, so I love meeting new teachers. Reach out to me, send me an email. I've had people come in as early as January. I mean, or, for the following year. Right now, my positions are filled as of now, as far as I know. But for next year, I know there's some things coming up. And so I have people reach out to me. I show them around the school. Prior to March is a big hiring time. And I'll encourage them to come by in January, even now. I mean, they could come by. I do know I have an art teacher opening. Look, I'm already doing it. Like, if you have an art credential, it's an awesome school. I love my little school. And so, yeah, reach out, come and I'll show you around. And I don't think it's too early to do any of that. You find a place and you're in a spot right now where there's some opportunities and you can pick where you want to work right now and what field you want to be in. And, if you want to be in an art school, if you want to be in a science STEM school, there's bilingual school. I mean, there's so many opportunities. Go where your heart's taking you. You'll flourish, so please reach out.
Before I move to Jennifer, I'm going to go back to Veronica and ask the same question since you're a site principal. Do you feel the same way as Christy does, that, teachers should or future teachers should drop by and meet you or send you an email? What works best for you?
Absolutely. I love also to meet new teachers, and I look forward to getting emails of people who are interested in our program and our school, and reach out, especially if it's a specific program you're interested in.
Okay, great. All right, Jennifer, I'll let you answer the broader question because I know your position's a little different than these other two.
Okay, so although I think our principals would say the same, we're a small district, so we're pretty in tune with just 3 elementary schools and 1 middle of what the others would like as well. So for us, it's very similar to what you heard. Typically, you will have a panel, but sometimes it might only be 2 people. It just depends on the interview and the position that we are interviewing for. I try very hard to make sure whatever the vacancies are, that the site administrators that represent those vacancies are on the panel, because as was brought up, right now is an amazing time for you to be entering the profession, because you really have choices of where you start your professional career. Versus when some of us started, there were not very many jobs, but you really can find the place that you feel is the right fit for you, as well as the district doing the same. You're kind of both interviewing each other. So for us, it's typically 1 interview. Sometimes there might be a second interview, kind of depends on how many vacancies and how many applicants, but typically it is 1 round. Because we're smaller and because usually all the decision makers are right there at the table, over the past couple years, things are so competitive that we have made offers right on the spot at the conclusion of an interview. So it depends. The other piece, in addition to getting out there and meeting the school sites and making yourself known if you haven't been there, is think about subbing. I'm sure all of us have vacancies right now that we'd love for you to apply for of some sort. But if you're not quite ready for that mid-year, we are all also in desperate need of subs wherever we are. So that's a great way to try out grade levels that you didn't experience in co-teaching, or even to get to know a school. Because in all of our districts, there's a different culture and climate at every school. There's hopefully a common stream throughout a district, but each school is its own family.
I love that you said that, Jennifer, because subbing, as you're starting in January, subbing would be a great place for you to really dip your feet in and see, oh, I really love this school. So completely, yes.
So the other thing I heard Jennifer, you say, I think, is that there are times where you've offered jobs on the spot. So it sounds like that as a candidate, you better do your background research to know that you really want to teach there before spending the time going through an interview.
Correct. Although I would say be cautious if a district is pressuring you to make a decision on the spot. That would worry me at any point in my career. So while we all want answers quickly, and that's why you're being offered so quickly, is because there was an immediate impression that you made. But while we need answers quickly, it's okay if you need to think about it, if you need to wait a day or 2. We standardly will give someone a week to respond before we have to really think about moving on, because again, it's so competitive right now that we can't go for weeks and weeks. But if you're confident because you did all your homework ahead of time and this is where I want to be, then great. That can be part of why you're accepting so quickly. But if that catches you off guard, there should be no reason that a district would change their mind because you weren't able to answer on the spot.
Great advice. So we've kind of touched on all of these, but Jennifer, what if you just share with the group here what your top recommendations are to have the best interview?
Well, I think they've all come out. So what I would reemphasize that's already been said this evening was, again, it's okay if you're nervous. Typically, you'll find that as the interview goes on, if you're feeling good about the questions in the panel, those nerves will settle down a bit, and it does not worry a panel when you're nervous. Again, be honest about what you already know and what you're ready to learn, or how you would respond to things in the future, even though you haven't had the experience already. And just confidence, enthusiasm, and our biggest thing for us is, again, that drive to want to connect with students. We're looking for those that see the importance of making connections with students and families.
I want to point out something you just said, Jennifer, that you talked about what they already know and what they're looking forward to learning versus saying what they don't know, right? So notice how Jennifer, I'm just saying this to everybody out there, made that a positive, right? Because there's always things to learn. And you heard Christy talk about the same thing, is it's all a positive thing. So it's not a plus and a minus, it's all part of learning. So I just wanted to point that out, because in one of the articles the students are reading, it talks about doing what you just did. So thanks for that. Veronica, your top recommendations at this point, or the things you'd like to reiterate?
Top recommendation is you don't have to know all the answers, but don't hesitate to ask to have the question reread or rephrased. If you didn't understand it, because sometimes we are nervous and we're not listening to the actual question, and say, oh, excuse me, can you repeat the question, so that you make sure that you try to answer the whole question, because sometimes there's two questions in one, or they're a little difficult, but do that. And even though you're nervous, breathe and relax and reaffirm before you walk in. You got this far, you got this. I know you do.
Christy, you want to add on to that?
I do. Everything you said, you guys, it's been great. I think about two things. Coming to this tonight, I thought about, what do I want? I mean, as a new teacher, I think about there's some things, two things, that connection with kids, for sure, families. Also, I think about differentiation. That's things people look for in interviews. How are you going to serve? You could be in a 4th grade class and have kindergarten levels on up to fifth or 6th grade reading levels. So just want you to think about how you would differentiate and serve all the kids in that environment. That is probably a question that comes up on the interview. And the other thing is the classroom management, that, you get that handled, you can do everything else. I mean, everything else can be learned, the curriculum, the standards. And so know that that is a piece that is going to be super important, that classroom management piece. So, and I think you guys said it all, but that's what comes to mind.
Great. So Christy, I'll start with you. That this is a new question.
Yeah.
I asked the class to write questions ahead of time, and
Yeah.
but one of the things that some of you touched on a little bit, could you talk a little bit about the fit at the school? And some of you talked about the environment and being, the right environment that you want to be in, kind of along the lines of, if you don't get hired, how do you help somebody know that there is a place for them out there, and that sort of thing, I guess, is really the broader question. So take whatever angle of that, and please share any thoughts on that.
Sure. I mean, I think about in my career, I heard a lot of no's before I heard yeses, and I just kept going. My drive kept me going, and I kept, I just kept looking at schools. And when I wanted to be a principal, I started as a vice principal, and I don't know, I just heard some no's, and that was okay. That wasn't my spot then. And I just kept applying for jobs, and I got one, and I feel like I've been very successful and really happy. And I think our school's a great little community. So I think don't give up on no, because we hear that a lot in life. That's okay. It just drives me farther into, hey, that might not be the place, but there is a place for me. So that's what I think about.
Jennifer?
Great advice and great question. That exactly. It's always so tough when you get told, I was born and raised here in King City. And when I came for my interview for my first job here in King City, I was not, my principal, who I'd known nearly all my life, she shared with me that I was actually not at the top of the list. It was 2 people ahead of me. There were so few openings at the time. 2 people ahead of me turned them down. And that's how I rose to getting the job offer at that time. And she said it wasn't because I was nervous, but because I did not, all the things we've been touching on tonight, I was afraid to talk about the things I didn't know. I was afraid to admit a lot of the things that were the weaknesses, perhaps. And so she said my interview was so poor that took me down on the list. And it was not a reflection of my ability. But you are still presenting yourself as I am confident and that I am the right person for the job. And so fortunately it did work out, but you're right. You just have to keep trying. The other thing is you really don't always assume that it's something you did wrong, because remember, you don't know who else was on the panel, what the position is, or what little unique situation they might be trying to fill. And so it may have absolutely nothing to do with who you are or your interview, as much as we knew that for this position, it was not going to be a great fit, but hopefully you'll come back for another one. As part of our interviews, I meant to share earlier when we were talking about the procedure, we always ask if you were to have your dream position, what grade levels or subjects would you prefer? Because we are trying to match what someone feels is the best place for them to start with what our needs are. And so it's not a guarantee, but being honest with that, because again, if you're really a primary grade person and the opening we have is 6th grade, and everything you've talked about really shows that where you're going to thrive is with 5 and 6-year-olds, not 6th graders, then that might not be a great way to set you up for success in year 1. So, and don't be afraid to ask what you could do better next time. You know, it's okay to ask for feedback.
Oh, so that brings up another interesting point. So Jennifer, if somebody doesn't get a job, let's say, and you're part of the panel, is it okay if the candidate reaches back out to you to get that feedback?
Yes, I don't see that as a problem. Sometimes the feedback might not be as specific as you would like, because of course, within personnel, you have to be very cautious on things you say and what you do. But there's nothing out there that says you can't ask. So again, you know, I found out how I interviewed really impacted that first potential job. So I improved on that 5 years later when I went to LSL.
I heard Christy kind of say the same thing. Veronica, what about you as far as the fit for the school, or what if you don't get hired? You know, how should
I really
they
liked
react?
what Jennifer said about not making it because you didn't get the job. It's not about your ability. I did plenty of my interviewing and did not get, you know, plenty of jobs that I really wanted. But I always reflect on something that I read many years ago, that it says there's a lot of great teachers out there, but they're not great for Alianza. That's for us. So because we're looking for such unique teachers to meet such unique needs of students, you know, the dual language, the 90-10, it's such a specialized program. And I've heard from both Jennifer and Christy that they also have many specialized programs that you might not just, you're still a great teacher, you're just not the right fit for that specific school or that grade level. So keep on searching and you'll find that school where you find your niche, where you'll grow and, you know, become an amazing, phenomenal teacher.
Wonderful. I think at this point, I'm going to open it up to the students in the class and see what other questions that they're wanting to ask. So I know, Jane, I'll let you ask your question first.
Yes, hi, thank you all so much for your time. I'm wondering, we've talked a lot in classes about paper versus online portfolios. Is that something you look for your candidates to have? And if so, is there a preference as to if it's on paper or online or both, or what those should include for us to bring into the interviews?
I like either. I'll tell you, online, I may have a preference too, because I can thumb through it prior. In the interview, there we have our questions, and we may have several people we're interviewing at the time. Paper's okay too. I do, everything's on the application, but not your portfolio. So yeah, either one would work. I would tend to probably go for online, looking at that, but that would probably be my preference.
So do you expect candidates to come to an interview with a paper portfolio there to hand out?
No.
Or what do you expect them to bring anything to the interview to hand out or anything like that? No.
No.
Any other answers to any of
Did you
that
have them
other
do a
piece?
portfolio, Rob?
No.
Okay.
Well, indirectly they have a portfolio, right?
Okay. Yeah.
Jennifer, Veronica, go ahead.
I've had some people come with them in a binder, but the reality is it goes so fast and it's fast paced when we're interviewing, especially if there's several candidates, that we rarely have a chance to look at it. So I say we don't really look at them. I'm sorry to say that.
Well, that's good to know. Jennifer?
I agree. And as was stated, that online, attaching it with your application, your paperwork online, because again, you have to make that, unless we know you already, that's what's making the first impression, is that paper packet that you've submitted virtually online. And so if you have things we can look at there, then we may ask questions during the interview for you to elaborate on something we saw. But no, it's not something we look for in person either.
So I'm hearing several of you say an online portfolio might be the thing to have, which could include video or things like that in case you decide to look at it, huh?
Correct. I was just going to clarify, and we do not require it online either. I wouldn't want anyone to have to go out and do anything extra right now. But if it was a part of your program anyway, and something that you had anyway, then sure, share a link within your resume or within your letter of introduction or someplace within your packet.
Okay. Other thoughts, Christy or Veronica, about that?
I think about some questions I've had, like, tell me about the most successful lesson you had. And just in an interview, we might say that. And then you may, this is what I did. And that may be a time you could pull something out or just show, what the kids learned and your data from that. Like, this is how I know they learned this. That might be for me, it would say a lot. So that would be a place to pull out something. But
Great. Anybody else got any burning questions? All right, so here's some other questions they asked earlier was, what's the most challenging? So I'm going to ask the question and I'll see how you respond. What's the most challenging interview questions that we may get? So Jennifer, why don't you start with that one? What would you say is the most challenging interview question to ask?
My goodness. So, wow, that's a good one to stump us, right? Because it's perception of what's the most challenging. I'm trying to think way back to when I was in your shoes, what would have been most challenging? Something kind of within the realm of that we tend to ask in one way or another is another one that really doesn't have anything to do with your knowledge of standards, lesson planning, all the things you would expect, but it's one about how you handle a difficult situation. So how have you handled, you've had an encounter with a difficult person, because it could be a peer, it could be a student, it could be a parent, et cetera, and how you handled it, what the outcome was, et cetera. Because again, we're looking at how do you respond to these unique situations. So that one can be very challenging for people is what we have found, but it's very telling as well.
Veronica or Christy?
I would say, or around that same, I think the most challenging one is a difficult discipline situation when you have to talk to parents. We do a little scenario in one of our questions. And I think that usually is, sometimes students think we're looking for, these are the rules, I'm going to go to the principal, and we actually are looking for a more open-minded, restorative practice, kind of view. And so at least at our school, so really read up on, that part of discipline.
yeah, I'll piggyback on that. We're really not suspending anymore. We know that it is not effective for kids, and we are looking for those restorative practices and not having them outside your room. It's in your room, and how to solve those. It's how to help the students. And the only other thing, I brought it up before, is the differentiation with the different levels of kids. And, what are you teaching? How do you know they learned it? And what are you going to do if they haven't learned it? Or what if they already know it? Those types of things, which you've probably heard in your programs. So those are some things.
Great. Christy, just to follow up with you, I just want to validate what I think you all said, which is when a teacher walks into an interview, they might carry a binder of stuff, so to speak, just in case. But generally, they're not going to pull it out unless there's an opportunity to talk about it. What might be some of the types of things that a teacher might put in a binder to have just in case they would need it?
So I think about, anytime you teach something, you have a goal in mind, like, what do I want my kids to learn? And did you accomplish that? Something to pull out would be, this is how I know they learned it. This was my objective. We were to learn how to invert fractions, and here's my data. That's what I think about. I mean, you could pull that out. Here are the quizzes. I got 85% of the kids learned it. Or
so some actual lessons and results, it sounds like.
Yes, maybe maybe not the lesson, but just going over the lesson, but here are the results. This is what they learned. Because, we all we're in this, we want them to learn. And it's not the teacher show. It's like, okay, it's the kids. It's all about the kids.
Jennifer, Veronica, anything else that if you were interviewing that you might carry with you or recommend that teachers carry with them?
If you have any examples of communication you have with families, parents, the way you communicated when you did your student teaching, if you wrote them letters or, if you set up a web page, anything like that, that's very important. I think for all schools that the teacher have either a weekly or a monthly communication or way they communicate, and if it's techie, like Class Dojo or anything like that, or Google Classroom, that would be really nice for us to be able to see. At some point, you might be able to show that.
Jennifer, anything you'd add?
I think that really covers it. If you already have permission from the families because they've signed releases, photos are never a bad thing either. So to go along with those actual student artifacts, photos of your experience and it's not that we're looking for them, it's the conversation or the questions that it might lead to.
Great. So Jennifer, I'm going to follow you up with this other question here. So when you or your team makes a final decision on which candidate you're going to offer a job to, what weighs most heavily in that decision?
Again, it goes back to what we've been talking about this evening, that we feel this person is the right fit for the vacancy we're filling. And depending on at what point in the year you're going through this process, if we're interviewing early in the season, so anywhere, February on, we most likely, unless you're a single subject and we only have one opening, say it's for a science teacher. But if you're a multiple subject teacher, odds are we won't be able to tell you yet what position you'll be filling, because the school still has all of the processes to go through for all of our current staff to move around into vacancies. If it's later in the hiring season, we may know exactly, I need a 5th grade teacher and I need a kindergarten teacher. And so it goes back to what's the best fit. What did the candidate speak to? What do we know we're looking for? Where do we think? Because what we want is for you to be successful. We know what resources we have that we can partner you up with to help guide you to that success, but nobody wants to put someone in a position where up front this is not going to be successful for them.
Veronica or Christy, anything to add? All right, so so Christy, maybe I'll ask you this question first. So when somebody asks the question, is it who should be doing most of the talking in the interview, and should the candidate? Is it bothersome if the candidate does most of the talking, or how do you feel the balance there? I guess is really the question here.
Yeah, they should do the most talking. This is the time to shine. Pull out all the stops, say what you need to say and what you're passionate about. And we ask questions and we're listening and taking notes, and let your personality shine. This is your time to shine and toot your horn. What have you done? That's what I think about. And you may have time to ask questions at the end and have some questions in mind, what you're curious about. We like that. Don't not have a question. Have a question.
It sounds like the other thing you're saying is that just a one sentence answer to a question does not cut it too well.
No, elaborate, definitely elaborate. And if it's not going to be wrong. It's just what you think right now. And we think about that, and it's great. I mean, I would rather you try something and then as a principal or the coach, just say, hey, how do you think that worked? If it didn't work, let's try something else. I mean, that's what we do.
Right. Veronica?
You should be doing most of the talking. I mean, the majority, and no single sentence answers. And it's okay to say, this is use your student master teacher as an example. Like during my student teaching, I noticed Ms. Hernandez did this, or, whoever your teacher, and I really liked it, or I'd like to implement the same program, or interested in those strategies. And, talk from your experience, basically, and what you've learned from your student teaching.
Jennifer, anything to add?
So if you're a talker like me, on the flip side, you may be curious about how long, because yes, you should be doing most of the talking, but don't be afraid to ask when you're contacted to set up the interview about how long, if that's a problem. If you're not a talker like me, don't worry about it. But if you are, if you know that's something that you need to keep a handle on, then you may want to ask if these are 15, 20, 30-minute interviews so that you can kind of think about being a little more succinct so that you can get to all the points that you want to make.
Wonderful. So you've answered all the questions that everybody has asked, and we appreciate that. Maybe I'll turn it back over to each one of you based on this interaction that you've all had with each other. I'm assuming you didn't know each other before this, so that's kind of fun to get to know new people who are part of our service area. And before, so I'll let you think about your final words, but I also want to say to you is that this group of students is outstanding, and any one of you will be lucky to have any of them teach in your schools. But also know that our next cohort are close to 100 elementary co-teachers. So in June, we'll have like another 100 students looking for jobs. So I appreciate all that insight that you've shared with me. And I've had the good fortune of having these students in 2 different courses. So I've gotten to know all of them because of both of the courses I teach. And as I say to so many people, I am so hopeful for the future of our teaching profession in our area because of the candidates that we have here at CSU Monterey Bay. So that's my little pitch for everybody who's in this class. But let me start with Christy to kind of share any final thoughts, and then we'll do Jennifer and Veronica. You can finish it up, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, I'm really excited to be here. When I got a message from Rob about coming to speak, I was honored, and this has been a great career. I am so grateful that I've had this opportunity to teach and to interact with families and in the Marina community. And I'm excited for you. I think you've picked an excellent career. And that's it. I want you to just flourish and have a great time. Enjoy your job. Enjoy it. It's fun. It's really fun.
Thanks, Christy.
Yeah.
Jennifer?
Exactly the same. Again, of course it's challenging. Every career has its challenges, but it's so amazing that the difference, the journey that you're on and the impact that you can have on students, regardless of age, and to families. We think of students and students and students, but it's also to families. And the other piece is that for the profession and career that you've chosen is think about the amount of directions that you can go throughout your career. There are so many things that you can do that will continue to ultimately have an impact on students, but there are many different hats you can wear throughout your profession. So if you're someone that likes to kind of change things up after a certain time, whether it's changing grade levels, changing schools, changing your role, education is a great pathway for that. So welcome. We're very excited to welcome you into it. And I know when we need a refresher, what we do is go sit in a classroom because children is what we started with, and that's what re-energizes us. So we're excited to welcome you into our little secret bubble of the good things of education.
Thanks, Jennifer. Veronica?
And I'd like to say, kind of following what these wonderful women have said, is don't lose your focus that you entered education for our students. They will recharge you. They will give you the love. They will take care of you. They are amazing. And yes, every time I need a recharge, I just need to go outside and do your duty. And I get so much attention and care and energy. And it reminds me every morning that I open 300 doors and say, buenos dias, good morning. It gives me, yes, this is why I chose education. And so always keep that focus. They're why we're here. And thank you for joining this field and deciding to become a teacher. We need you. Our students need you, and our community is counting on you. So this is a journey. I know that's been said several times by Jennifer. It is a journey. And remember, there's going to be ups and downs like in any career. But don't lose the focus. The students do care. The families do appreciate you, and they're here for you. And don't forget, administration is also here for you. We're not on the other side. We're here for you also and for our students. So don't lose the focus.
Great. Thanks again to all three of you for being here tonight. I would invite all the students in this class to type something in the chat of gratitude to Jennifer and Veronica and Christy. Thanks again for being here.